Star Trek, Discovery's final season gave two characters the same story. Star Trek, Discovery Season 5 brought the show to its conclusion in 2024, but it did so by giving one of its new characters the same storyline as one of its longest-serving figures. The Star Trek, Discovery Season 5 cast was a blend of familiar faces and franchise debuts. Everyone contributed to give the show a proper send-off, but a strange writing choice resulted in a duplicated character arc. They weren't completely identical, but close enough to be noticeable. That being said, with all the chaos in Discovery's final season, the similarities would be easy to miss. After traveling to the 32nd century at the end of Star Trek, Discovery Season 2, the titular vessel's crew was exposed to settings and characters that hadn't previously been accessible to the rest of the franchise. Some of Star Trek, Discovery's best characters only arrived after this massive time jump, so it was a very worthwhile twist. Weirdly, despite the vast array of possibilities, the Discovery writers got in each other's way in one specific area just before the show ended. Raynor and Saru were both captains without a ship in Star Trek. Discovery Season 5, Saru Doug Jones steps down as the USS Discovery's captain in Star Trek, Discovery Season 5. He moves into diplomatic work and becomes a Federation ambassador. So Michael Burnham is the ship's captain throughout Star Trek, Discovery Season 5. Although Saru was forced to resign his Starfleet commission to become an ambassador, he had already proven himself worthy of a command position. So while he was still at the level of a Starfleet captain, he wasn't in charge of a ship. Weirdly, Callum Keith Rennie's Raynor experienced something similar. Like Saru, Raynor was a former captain who had ceased to be a ship's leader. Raynor was also a captain at the beginning of Discovery's finale season. Just like Saru, his career took an unexpected turn. The biggest difference is that Raynor was asked to retire from Starfleet after acting recklessly during a mission while in command of the USS Antares. However, Captain Burnham needed a first officer, so she made the unconventional suggestion of Raynor being demoted to commander instead and installing him aboard Discovery. So like Saru, Raynor was a former captain who had ceased to be a ship's leader. Raynor probably became a Starfleet captain again after Star Trek, Discovery. Saru became a happily married Kelpian before the end of Star Trek, Discovery, and he displayed no interest in returning to action for Starfleet. Inversely, Burnham's faith in Raynor's redemption proved to be well placed. Although they had a bumpy start to their working relationship at first, they went on to become a formidable pair that both taught each other lessons they never expected to learn. If it hadn't been for Burnham's intervention, it seemed unlikely Raynor would have ever been permitted to return to Starfleet. Thankfully, Martin Green's character saw something in Raynor that could be nurtured and reshaped into an officer who got things done without the need for such bold and drastic tactics that had previously put countless lives at risk. So it's tough to imagine a scenario where he didn't earn his way back to the rank of captain after Star Trek, Discovery ended. In its final season, Star Trek, Discovery set out to close a number of narrative loops, honor its legacy, and give its sprawling ensemble cast satisfying farewells. But in its ambition to provide meaningful resolutions for its beloved characters, the series stumbled into a familiar television pitfall, inadvertently assigning the same story arc to two different characters. Both Cleveland Book Booker and Sylvia Tilly found themselves navigating near-identical thematic journeys, paths of redemption, self-forgiveness, and rediscovery of purpose, rendering their respective storylines frustratingly redundant in the context of the show's swan song. Parallel journeys of redemption, Book and Tilly, while occupying vastly different positions within Discovery's narrative universe, were both introduced as characters driven by deep empathy and fierce loyalty. Book, a courier and empath, brought an outsider's skepticism but a tender heart into the Federation's fold. Tilly, by contrast, evolved from an awkward ensign into a confident officer and mentor. Yet in Season 5, both are saddled with arcs centered around reconciling their past traumas and reaffirming their place in the world, effectively mirroring each other beat for beat. Book's arc in the final season is built on the fallout from his Season 4 actions, where his grief over the destruction of his homeworld, Quagian, led him to side with Ruan Tarka in a reckless mission to destroy the dark matter anomaly DMA. His betrayal of Starfleet's ideals weighed heavily, and Season 5 positions Book as a man seeking atonement, estranged from Michael Burnham, disconnected from his empathic gifts, and drifting without a purpose. Tilly, meanwhile, returns after her partial departure in Season 4, having taken a teaching role at Starfleet Academy. Her final season arc frames her as similarly adrift. Though she has found fulfillment in mentoring cadets, there is an undercurrent of doubt about whether she belongs on the bridge or in the classroom. Like Book, she is searching for the intersection between her past self and the person she has become. The problem is not that both characters have stories about finding purpose. That's a classic Trek theme. The problem is how similarly those arcs unfold. Both Book and Tilly isolate themselves, confront lingering guilt over past choices, receive guidance from wise mentors in Book's case, through reconnecting with his empathic abilities, in Tilly's, through heartfelt conversations with Admiral Vance and Saru, and ultimately realize that their value lies not in grand gestures but in smaller, daily contributions to the Federation's ideals. By the time both characters come home, Book reconciling with Burnham and Tilly rejoining Discovery's bridge crew, their journeys feel less like parallel explorations of different themes and more like narrative retreads. The emotional beats are virtually identical, robbing each arc of uniqueness and eluding the impact of their individual growth. A symptom of Discovery's ensemble problem, this duplication of character arcs highlights a long-standing structural issue in Star Trek. Discovery, its struggle to balance a large ensemble. While series like Deep Space Nine or The Next Generation master the art of rotating focus across a wide array of characters, Discovery has always been heavily centered on Michael Burnham. As a result, supporting characters often go long stretches without substantial development, only to have their stories compressed into short, thematically similar bursts in later seasons. In Season 5's case, with the end in sight, the writers clearly sought to give Book and Tilly closure. But with limited screen time and many plot threads competing for attention, including the season's overarching quest for the progenitor technology, distinct character arcs began to collapse into one another. Book's and Tilly's stories, rather than complementing or contrasting each other in meaningful ways, ended up echoing each other too closely. Missed opportunities for divergence. The redundancy between Book and Tilly's arcs is all the more frustrating because both characters had clear potential for differentiated journeys. For Book, a deeper exploration of grief and reconciliation with his cultural identity could have set his story apart. His empathic connection to nature and Quajian's traditions offered fertile ground for a unique narrative about healing through heritage and reconnection, distinct from Starfleet-centric redemption. Tilly, on the other hand, could have had a compelling arc centered less on finding purpose and more on defining leadership. Having evolved from cadet to mentor, her journey could have been about embracing the role of teacher and strategist, a storyline about passing the torch rather than returning to past roles. Instead, both characters ended up on similar introspective journeys, and while their performances, David Ajala and Mary Wiseman, both bring nuance and charm, two of legacy,